Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Melissa Delaney with PI Presence. I am the president there, and I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Sarah Tetlow, and she is the CEO and founder of Firm Focus and the creator of the ART email system, and that is a registered trademark. That's not correct. You correct me. But we are here to talk about the future of legal operations and marketing in 2026. We are getting close to closing out the year. The holidays are coming up. Let's talk about how we can build the firm of the future. We're also going to talk about some other items and segment this out. So we're going to have scaling your law firm conversation, as well as what works in legal marketing and putting it in practical, forward-thinking, real-world sense for all of you to digest. Now, for that, I would like to introduce Sarah. And Sarah, if you wouldn't mind giving our audience just a quick intro of yourself, please.
Excellent. Awesome. Hi, Melissa. Always great to have conversations with you. And yes, I am Sarah Tetlow. My business firm Focus was created after working in law firms for 15 years and finding really that my passion and what I love to do the most aligned with a need in the industry, which is project, task, time, attention, and email management. So that is all we do at Firm Focus through coaching, speaking and training, and consultations on the inbox. We just do time management coaching. So that's a little bit about Firm Focus and me and my business.
Yeah, and this is like incredibly important, especially for those lean firms, right? Like if you have people who are wearing multiple hats in your firm, like they're not just the secretary, they're not just the receptionist, they're not just your paralegal, they're all of the above, and they're managing bills, or you're the single attorney handling all of that in the firm. Like this is going to be such a great topic for anyone to take home, whether it's a managing partner, the administrator, or even other legal professionals who are kind of helping out smaller lean firms. So I'm really excited for them to hear what you have to say because I have seen your presentations before at some of the events and also Improvisers, which is where I met you. And I'm just so fond of you and your work and what you do. People always walk away with amazing tidbits. So thanks for being with us today.
Of course.
Now, I know we've both spent many years, each of us, in law firms helping get more intentional with what their operations and teams are doing from both the administrative side as well as the marketing side. So you and I both dabble in those. What are
Mhm.
you already kind of seeing as a signal to like how a firm will operate differently in 2026?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, productivity always seems to be on the top of the list of important things for people to do. And productivity has a pretty wide meaning. We can talk about productivity for the widgets or the deliverables that people are producing. We can talk about productivity when it comes to automation in various software onboarding, intake, marketing, um, different things that you're doing within the firm. And you can talk about productivity. I already mentioned marketing, but on what you're doing for your marketing endeavors or business development endeavors. So productivity runs the gamut of what that means. So in terms of shifts that I'm seeing in 2026, some of it is a lot more of the same in that productivity is top of mind. I think some of the big things, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit, AI, really adopting AI, and what understanding what AI means. I think the word is a buzzword and it gets thrown around. And I know recently when I had a conversation with someone who is pretty well versed in AI, I said, I think people kind of dodge the words or the topic sometimes because they question if they have the right knowledge around what it really means to be using AI. And well, AI, of course, stands for artificial intelligence, and there are some extreme LLMs and agents that are still areas I'm exploring. On the opposite end, AI also is automation that they're already using, sometimes in their email, like rules or quick
Right.
steps or filters. In their intake process, they probably have some AI or form of AI or automation that they might already be using, or that is the big shift that they're starting to see now and wanting to focus on as we roll into 2026, making sure that their productivity is aligning with AI as well. So that's a big shift, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and how to use it to be more efficient with your time. How is it making your life easier
Right.
and giving you more time to do the things that you AI can't do, like be in meetings.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's so true. And I just had a very long conversation with another guest about AI, and our listeners can go check that out. But it is so up in the air right now, which direction things might go, especially in legal spaces, especially in what capacity the firms can use it and
Mhm.
how close you want to let your customers get to AI, right? Because you don't want to lose that connection because a lot of the law firm personnel is the only connection to to the client on the other end of the line. So you need to maintain that relationship. And where do we draw the line? It becomes a very philosophical conversation, existential problem.
Absolutely. In fact, on that topic, I was just having a conversation in a breakout room with some attorneys where the chat box, when it feels like you are talking to a bot, that can actually be a very negative reaction for your
Very.
customers. So there's an example of where not to use AI aligned with
Yeah.
marketing. But anyway, yes, that's definitely a change that we're seeing, and we
Yeah,
certainly need to focus there. But yeah.
that's a huge topic with marketing, especially when these people want to put them on their website, their business websites. They think the chat box is super important. And you go to professionals for professional services organizations for that next level that
Mhm.
you can't Google. Like
Right.
you don't go to WebMD for your doctor prescriptions, you actually go to your doctor. So, there becomes this like, okay, where do we draw the line? And I think that it's going to be unique to each firm for sure. It's going to be unique to the comfortability of the people using the technology and those pieces. But I also think it's going to come down to leadership and like what direction leadership is giving. And I'm curious from your seat if there's any mindset shifts that firm leaders will need to make next year to stay competitive. And it doesn't have to be around AI, it could be, but is that one of them?
It is one of them. And to avoid going completely down that route, because I know we certainly have other topics that we can stay on here. I think on the flip side, delegation is huge. And within delegation, I do a lot of programs and or coaching on delegation. And one of my programs is
I love that one.
delegation one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the torque. So I'll very, very briefly go into torque. When I created this program on delegation, because naturally that is an area that we coach on a lot because time management, your time is finite. What can or should you be delegating? And when I looked at building that program and what goes into effective delegation, I love acronyms, Melissa, so I came up with TORC. And in very brief summary, because certainly I have other podcasts on delegation that go way deeper on the topic, so I'll keep it very surface level here. But the T is trust and respect. So building that mutual trust and respect, not just running from leader down. The trust and respect actually needs to run up too, because what we often see when you have, I'm going to just use the words that most of your listeners are going to recognize, even though I don't mean to put people in a defined role, but partner to associate. So when we have a situation where a partner might be delegating to an associate, most would think that the trust and respect needs to run from the partner level down to the associate. I trust and respect that this associate has a good work product, communicates, is responsive, meets the required deadlines. But it also runs the other way too, because absent that trust and respect running from the associate to the partner, we start to see a lot of the issues that I coach on, like procrastination, the
Mhm.
unresponsiveness, the they went MIA or they ghosted me. And that is because they're dealing with, meaning the associate is dealing with internal turmoil that every time I work for this partner, I can never seem to do good enough. And so they struggle with the time that they invest into that work product for that particular leader or partner because it's a waste of their time at the end of the day if they can never meet the satisfaction of that partner or leader. So the rest of them I'll go through quickly. I know I said it quickly and then I can't
No,
help
no,
myself
no. I
sometimes.
mean,
So
Trust
It
is one of the number one breakdowns on a team.
it
So
is.
for team
Yep.
building, that's really important.
Yep. Yep. And the thing the leader says, I can do this faster, I can do this better, I can do this um, cheaper or whatever. So the trust and respect is huge. And then leading into the rest of the TORC acronym, they have to be organized. And what I mean by that is project manage, anticipate, know what's coming up so that they set themselves and everybody else up for success. So even though the leader or the partner doesn't necessarily have the space or time to work on X project today or tomorrow, by just being a little bit organized and anticipating what they're going to need when they're able to dedicate some deep work time to that particular deliverable, they can set the associate or the other team members up for success, giving it to them with enough advanced time so that by the time they're ready to sit down with that deliverable, they've been able to give the space and time to everybody else to get the work to them in
Right.
time. So that's the O. The R is repetition.
Mhm.
Repetition through working with the same people on similar projects and within similar processes. In other words, to just elaborate briefly on this, you wouldn't give a one-off 2 hour project that's going to take half hour to explain to someone who's temporarily filling in for your associate or assistant. That's not a good ROI on that. So repetition, effective delegation includes repetition of projects, processes, and people. The
Mhm.
Q and the U are attached to each other, which is the quality of work will not meet your expectation the first time you were working with those people on those types of projects or in that process. But with a you and understanding that over time that quality of work will increase through the torque method, through building that trust and respect, through you being a little bit more organized, through the
Mhm.
repetition of working with the same people on similar projects and processes,
Right.
quality of work will increase. And then finally, the E is, and this is really where I drive this question home, what can leaders be doing better? You have
Mhm.
to eliminate control. At the end of the day, it is control about I do it faster, I do it better, I do it cheaper, I do it because I didn't anticipate what I needed and now I just have to do it. I do it because my work product is going to be perfect. And if I give it to that other person, when I get it back, it's never up to my level of expectations. But as I just described, they have a large responsibility. The leader has a large responsibility to invest in the torque method and not necessarily described in the torque method, but the unspoken underlining assumption there too is feedback, the feedback loop,
Feedback loop is important.
communication, being available, all of that is dive deeper into in my programs.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah, that is a big shift.
yeah, it's so good. And, I think getting out of your own way is letting go of that control a little bit. And that's hard for some leaders who've been leading for a long time and haven't really had any leadership coaching or management coaching in a very long time. And they could have earlier on in their career, maybe they never did, who knows? But that's a personal thing that you really have to work on. And that comes also with the understanding that over time, you might get better at that.
Exactly. Yep.
That's great. That's great. Now, has anything carried over in your perspective from like the pre-pandemic era of like this hybrid workspace? Things are kind of evolving from hybrid work to intentional flexibility. Like I
Mhm.
am intentionally working from home on Wednesdays and Fridays because that is where I can get more work done because I'm not distracted by people walking by my office. Like what are you seeing now for
Yeah.
2026 as we're
Yeah.
coming out of this intentional flexibility?
It's all over the board from what I'm seeing. And I have to preface this by saying, um, I before the pandemic, I had a pretty old school mentality. I was in the office almost every
Mhm.
day. Over time, I think I worked from home 1 or 2 set days a week, but mostly in the office. And of course, almost all of the lawyers were in the office full time every day, with the exception of time off, depositions, hearings, on sites with clients, etc. But the idea of someone working from home on any regular cadence was unheard of. So, and you're from that mindset as well
Yeah.
from back then. So the
You were
shift,
chained to your desk.
You are chained to your desk. And
Yeah.
and just again tying it to productivity, there is this understanding that if I see you at your desk and you are doing stuff with your hands, you are being productive.
Hmm.
And of course, we know that's not even true. I mean, sometimes being productive is sitting there and strategizing. We are knowledge workers. Attorneys are paid for the work that they come up with up here, not necessarily how fast their fingers are moving.
Right.
And that has been a huge shift because, especially post-pandemic, and I want to get back to the hybrid and in office because as I mentioned, I'm seeing it all over the board. There's all kinds of
Hmm.
different things, but
It is.
I think that there's a heightened pressure, and often it's self-inflicted pressure, not even necessarily what is being communicated to you by others in the firm. But there's this heightened pressure that I need to be available immediately and responsive immediately to
Yeah.
communication channels because I need to prove that I am working when I am not visibly available to other people. And I know I'm not saying anything that is novel to anybody else, but I think it's becoming a problem. And I think another shift that I'm hoping we are starting to see is the understanding that there is not an immediate connection between how efficient or productive someone is being and how responsive they are being. Those are two completely different things. And that is
Totally.
part of what I need to coach people through is you have to have time throughout the day, whether you're sitting at home in a coffee shop, in a conference room, or at your desk in the office, you have to have time throughout the day to effectuate the work and not always be immediately responding to emails, Slack, Teams channels, whatever it is that text messages even.
Yeah.
Um, so back to your original question of hybrid work versus and the flexibility, the intentional flexibility. I have clients that work at firms that are still largely remote or hybrid with
Hmm.
a flexible come into the office if you want to. And of course that in those firms, it's a personal choice. I am more productive when I'm in the office, so I try to go in every day. However, in fact, the client I have this afternoon was like, I go into the office every single day. It's about a 40-minute drive, but I am way more productive in the office. But when I have to work from home, I actually have the exact same setup, but he knows himself. And at home, he is just so much more easily distracted
Sure.
by and it really is the visuals. I love, there's a book I read to my kids. I have this in one of my newsletters. There's a book I used to read to my kid called Mr. Oh gosh, Mr. Cooper's Superpower or something, or Mr. Superpower, Mr. Cooper. Totally butchered that. I don't remember what it's called. But in the book, the teacher says, I have a superpower. I can make you think of anything. And the kid, these are like third graders or something. They're like, no, you don't. And he goes, don't think of a pink elephant. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just thought
I
of a
know.
pink elephant, right? And I translate that to your visual space. So if you look around your desk and if you're trying, you have to work on emotion or you're working on an INE for your clients or a declaration, and you have that up on your screen. But then on your desk, you've got this other client's file and the notes from the call you just got off of, and your phone is staring at you and flashing. These are all pink elephants. We
Mm.
are not, our brain is not designed, it's not your fault, but it's not designed to quiet all of those and focus. And so I say, I have a quote that I say, productive people are productive because they use tools and systems to keep them on track. And
Hmm.
so mitigating the distractions around you, I think, is critical. I again went off on another tangent, bringing it back to the hybrid versus in office. When you have intentional flexibility, know yourself and don't fight it. I think sometimes too, people want to work from when they have that flexibility, they want to work from home because who doesn't? It's convenient. You don't have to commute anywhere. But if you are more productive in the office, I would recommend to find ways to build in to get to the office more often than not. Now, on the other extreme, I work with firms. I won't elaborate as much on this, but I work with firms that are mandatory 2 days in the office or 3 days in the office or even 5 days in the
Yeah.
office. I have
Yes.
one
Yeah.
client that never, I think they let their staff and employees and team go home for like 2 weeks in March of 2020. And then they said, we're going to follow protocol, but you're all in the office full time. In that extreme, I think it gets a little bit challenging because there are a lot of other firms out there that are offering intentional flexibility
Hmm.
and they're competitive
It's
because
competitive.
people want that. They, again, going back to
Absolutely.
that trust, if you can trust me that I am going to be productive, whether that is working from my workstation at home or sitting at my desk at the office, and know that I'm being productive based on the outputs that I'm giving, the billable hours, the deliverables, the clients I'm bringing in through marketing, and not by the fact that I'm responding to you within 5, 10, 15 minutes, then that is going to attract people more than any sort of mandatory in office for an
Yeah.
excessive amount of time. I think 2 to 3 days in office is still within reason that you're still being
That's good.
competitive within the market for that flexibility.
Yeah.
It's the 4, 5 days required in office, I think are no longer the norm. Would
Yeah.
you agree, Melissa? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm also seeing a lot of jumping around. There's some movement of attorneys to firms that are giving them more flexibility. I
Mhm.
also think that law firms have already been designed to be accountability monsters. Like they,
Yes.
billable hours every year, billable hours every month, collectibles every month, making sure you're bringing in a pipeline of business. Like there's a lot of accountability metrics that are built into the business of
Yeah.
law that flexibility has been difficult.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is, I think we're gonna start seeing in 2026, just to your point, like a little bit more of the intentional flexibility without the regimented
Hmm.
if those accountability metrics are being met, right?
Right.
Like let's set up proper accountability metrics, not just ones that are all about profit. I mean, those are very important, but let's not forget. But I think, mental well-being is huge for a lot of attorneys. If you're a solo shop person, the more you work, the more money you make, right? There's food on the table. I had the first lawyer I ever worked for, he called it when he got out of law school, he bought a I think it was like Food Law for Dummies book after he got out of law school because he was like, I need to put food on the table, so I will practice any law. Do. Right? Like
Yeah.
adorable and also like pulling up your bootstraps when you first get out of law school. But now if you're in a big law firm or if you're running your own ship and you're doing all of the things,
Hmm.
you're either accountable to yourself or to your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's very interesting. And I think communication has been kind of tossed in the washing machine and brought back out and it should have been dry cleaned, right? Like there was just so much that went on during COVID and now afterwards that communication has become not just like a tool of hybrid work experience or flexible work experience,
Hmm.
but it's like the only way people were communicating for almost a year in some cases. Like we were talking about the people who were fully remote. You know,
Hmm.
I'm curious if you think that there's any mistakes that leaders are still making when it comes to hybrid communication that we need to fix for
Hmm.
2026. I think that's such a cool question just because like let's fix it. Let's tell everyone to go fix it right now. If
Yes.
you have some good tidbits, of course.
Yes. Okay. I'm organizing my thoughts in my brain because I have a heavy reaction to this.
Okay.
First is I think it's critical for firms to take the time to define and create the SOP around the lanes of communication.
Hmm.
So I think where often we're seeing communication is we have email. That's one avenue at which we communicate or one medium. We have the instant emails also instant, but I actually disagree with that because it's instant in terms of when it gets sent and received, but not necessarily when you go and look at it, which goes into the whole thing I was talking about earlier, deep work and needing to set aside time. Anyway, so you have email, you have instant messaging through things like Slack or Teams channels or even text messages. You also, of course, have phone calls and meetings and stuff like that. And then, and I'm going to dive deeper into it. I think a fourth sort of lane, if I'm kind of compartmentalizing them, even though they all weave together, but I'll get back to why I'm kind of compartmentalizing them in this way. A fourth lane would be in the project itself, if you have the capability of communicating in the like project management tool. So I'm going to start there because I feel like I'm leaving a
Yeah.
bit unspoken or unclear definition around what I mean by that. And then I'll work my way kind of backwards for a second.
Well,
So again, with the goal of I recommend firms take the time to define what types of communication should be on which types of these channels. So with project management, that could be things like Monday.com. You might even have it within Clio or Practice Master or whatever Lawmatics that you're using. I personally, in my business, we operate off of Microsoft Planner, and I love that that is a tool that most of your users or sorry, most of your listeners and customers probably already have if they are on
mhm,
Microsoft Suite versus Google. You already have Microsoft Planner as part of your tools. Microsoft
right.
likes to not really broadcast all of the different tools that are readily available to you. So I operate my whole team on Microsoft Planner, and Microsoft Planner, I can create a task card for repeating projects, one-time
Hmm.
projects, whatever it might be. And then within that project task card, there's a lot of functionality like obviously establishing deadlines and assignments and labels and priority. You can put static notes in it. You can put the tasks or the checklist or the process in it, but you also have the ability to comment on it within the task card. And so with my team, our SOP is when you have an update, a question, a comment, anything to do with a specific assignment, put it in the task card. That way, even though I get an email alert about it, I have context to this question or update. One of the failures as I work my way backwards through those various lines of communication, I think one of the failures is updating, asking a question, communicating on things at the medium at which is most readily available to you. So I am on my phone, let me send a text message and ask this question, or let me just send a quick email to them and ask this. But we forget that the recipient is like, I actually encourage people to have their phone on silent and not be looking at it. I
Right.
won't see the text message or your email, you're not getting notified. You may not see that. Or I'm just not thinking about that project right now, or there's
Yeah.
no context to it. And so if the question update status or whatever is in the project itself, I now can go there, I can see the context to it, and I can respond more effectively and efficiently, which is a win-win overall. So
Yeah.
moving to the middle section of instant messaging, the instant messaging of Slack, Teams channels, etc. I think a fun thing that I've seen, as long as it's within reason and has some boundaries, is using those for certain channels about, I've seen companies where it's like we have one about pets or kids or
Yeah.
sports or whatever, where we have the trust in our team that they can have those friendly banters and conversations and have a limit to them so that it's not overtaking their productivity. But if we go to Stephen Covey's 4 quadrant model, quadrant 4, not important and not urgent, but he doesn't say avoid those. He says limit those because he knows our brain needs a break throughout the day. And so
Hmm.
that middle space is a really healthy way to have a channel of communication that people can opt in, opt out. But again, the healthy behavior around there is I would encourage people not to have notifications turned on, or every time someone's updating about their furry cats or cute dogs or cats
Ping,
doing funny
ping,
things, pings, pings,
ping.
pings.
Yeah.
And yeah, you cannot be productive.
No.
But certainly we don't want those kinds of updates going in a reply all in email. So that leads me to that. Oh, and then one more thing on the middle channel too. I think absent having a project management system established currently, I do recommend heading in that direction in
Hmm.
2026. But the instant messages through Slack and Teams and whatnot are good for quick questions, quick updates, but not assignments. Don't give out assignments via those methods. not lengthy updates. That should really be done via email. So leading into email, obviously email is a great way to communicate with external um, clients, the
Right.
courts, your marketing team, anything like that. Internal, those larger updates, absent having that project management thing set up, email is another way that can be effective for giving out assignments with the context that you need in any supporting documents, links, etc.
Right.
Um, but that is from a high level how I would definitely start to create some internal standards around what kind of communication should live where.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used Teams, I use Slack currently, and one of the things that I think that the team that I work with does really well is do something like what you mentioned. We have a random channel and it's just
Mhm.
random fun factoids. It's literally called random. And so that's where the cats are. That's where, someone's on vacation and they post their photo. And it's not live. So it's not live dinging constantly. I mean, it's impossible to be on calls with somebody or recording a video and getting that across at any point. So, it's just it allows you to check in when you have the time and carved out space for it, which is really important. I have seen some other channels created, for example, using Slack, creating a channel like tools, like something is not working properly, or here's a best practice that I recommend for when this situation comes up. And that is something I would highly recommend for a group that has varying degrees of skill sets on their team and they're trying to learn and teach either like an entry level person from a senior or vice versa. And it's another nice section that ends up being a teachable moment for our internal staff and team. And I absolutely love that because it's, you know, rising tide rises, is it all ships? All rises, all
Yeah,
ships. Is that how it
yeah,
goes? It's always
yeah.
great when the team is, sharing information, sharing how they can all be better at their job. And, if there is a breakdown, like getting on it pretty quickly. And then there's a space for the leaders to see like what's going on. And I also agree with your comment about, you know, larger communications with strategy, items like that, email, right? Especially when you're doing external conversations. Those should be
Absolutely.
in like a
Yeah.
Slack.
Yeah.
But, if you're gonna have a question for somebody like, hey, did you get a chance to review your bio before I post it on the website? Right? That's just an example. That's a quick DM, right? To one person from one person, and you can drop the link in that chat and
Mhm.
let them get right to it because that's what you're referencing. But if there is constant follow-up that needs to be done, at some point, definitely take it to email, right? I mean, I think at some point, if that's not the right communication tool for everyone, there's different generations in every office, no matter what your business is, you have to also be a little nimble with skill sets. I think, there's so much automation coming at us from so many different directions for everything, from
Yeah.
case management to internal DMs to HR forms, whatever it is. And it can be very overwhelming. And
Yeah.
so I think just making sure that there's all ways of communication, including in-person conversation,
Mhm.
is so important. And I think that in person is going to be really big in 2026, just because people are going back to
Yes.
being in offices, and I think there's going to be a lot more brainstorming and a lot more real strategy for 2026 for the future. Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does kind of lead to a question about burnout. I don't know. I mean, that is kind of a heavy topic too for law firms. Just everybody tends to burn out at some point in the year.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's right now because the holidays are coming up and they're trying to cram a lot in before everyone just disappears, and I get that. But is there any advice that you'd like to offer for some leaders to protect their teams from burnout using
Mhm.
either automation as support or, doing things that don't feel like surveillance?
Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of what we've already covered will lead to a reduction in burnout if they are thinking about how they can automate more things, thinking about productivity aligned with some AI. And um, I think certainly over time that can help reduce burnout. The delegation, the torque in
Communication.
particular, the intentional flexibility, that trust attached with that can all help lead to a reduction in burnout. But to elaborate on even more, sorry, I didn't wasn't clear on that sentence. To elaborate on it even more, without going too deep into it, I struggle with I don't personally struggle, but a lot of people in the industry struggle with the billable hour. And I hope
Yeah.
one day that goes away. I really, really hope that more and more and more firms realize that it's an antiquated model, because I do think there is a direct correlation between the billable hour and the burnout in the industry.
Hmm.
I know for me personally, when there is that pressure of I have to do this thing or I have to meet these numbers, it's operating under stress, and the stress causes things like the analysis paralysis, the procrastination, the perfectionism is another form of procrastination. The spinning, when we all have it where everything's really important and we start to spin, and then we just want to turn off the computer for half an hour and take a nap, or go watch Netflix or scroll on Instagram or watch the
Check out.
short reels because we get the dopamine hit. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to watch these videos for 20 minutes. I didn't even realize 20 minutes went by, but that's because your brain is begging you for a break. And if we take that back, the 20, 30 minutes, it's largely because of the pressure that you're feeling to meet all of these metrics. And so if I could paint a world where, through that trust, through some AI, through the metrics that you talked about as well, Melissa, where we can say, you get flexibility, we trust you that you'll bring in some clients and revenue, and we're going to be a profitable firm, and we're going to measure it, but it's not that big pressure that you have to hit 1,800, 2,000 hours. I actually think we can see an increase in billable hours, or an increase in overall revenue on each client matter, because we're pricing it right through our AFAs. And that will overall lead to a reduction in burnout. Now, we're still years away from that. We are slowly
Sure.
making that transition in the industry. Some firms have it figured out, others are still. And by the way, bonus for everyone who's listening, when you figure out your AFA, when you figure out that pricing model, you actually can collect a lot more than you can on the billable hour, because that's where you're getting
Right.
the write-offs or the pushback from the clients or the denial from the insurance companies. And when you can price it as a value package for the services you're offering, I think even PI firms can do this. I think
Hmm.
that a lot of the stuff you do, while very different cases, there's a very similar story behind each case and each type of
Right.
case. So once you can figure that out, then you actually can collect more and reduce the burnout at your firm. And that's another great thing about AI and the metrics that we're talking about. This doesn't
Right.
have to start today and look 3 years from now that we can get there. You can start to look today and look 3 years back in your historical data and figure out how to start to price these things. Test it with a certain type of client. So maybe your PI firm, I know different types of accidents that we're dealing with, a
Right.
wrongful death. Why don't we start with the most basic, excuse my cliche here, the low hanging fruit. Start with that and start an AFA model there and learn from that. And then you can start to grow and develop. But I really hope the industry makes that change while I am still on this earth. So,
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. You kind of like the way you brought up the metrics and the, knowing your numbers, basically. Like
mhm,
the billable hours allows the law firm to know their numbers, right?
right.
That's scalable. That's, they can look into the future and see what's coming. They're able to predict a 5-year plan with billable hours. So that's why it's been this way for so long.
Yeah.
Um, not having that and going to the AFA model is so interesting. And I do love it. I mean, I think still tracking hours without the hang up, like you said, of control, making sure, you know, they're not being surveilled to meet
Mhm.
their hours. That's the stressor that adds to burnout. I mean, obviously there needs to be some work products coming out constantly. That is part of the accountability piece, and law firms will always run a business model on accountability, like we talked about. But,
Right.
if there was any advice you would offer to an attorney who they need to move from knowing their numbers to acting on them. What
Mhm.
would be something you would advise them?
Hmm. You mean in relation to this AFA model in
Like
particular?
in relation to paying attention to their metrics. So even if it's not necessarily revenue, maybe
Yeah.
it's hours, maybe it's starting with three clients and doing AFA model and keeping the rest the other. Like, is there a way that you would recommend to anyone you're coaching? Like, okay, you know your numbers already, you know your business inside and out. What have you changed your perspective on it?
Hmm.
Like, is there
Yeah.
anything you would offer?
Yeah. I'm gonna go in the way my brain thinks in terms of like project management, task management, that kind of thing. Because I'm putting myself in their shoes and I feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed listening to this, knowing I know I need to be doing all of this, and I keep hearing this and this, like I know I need to do it. But then again, with what I was saying about the analysis paralysis, that's where we're sitting right now with your listener saying, I'm hearing this, I know I need to do it, and analysis
Wow.
paralysis, I'm not going to do any of it.
Yeah.
So, my recommendation, if I was coaching through this, would be just start with the 30,000 foot view. Take an afternoon, you probably don't even need a full afternoon, an hour to 2 hour deep dive block. Do it on a Friday afternoon when it's quieter in the office, or not that I, as a productivity expert, want you to work on the weekends, but I know you all do sometime. This is a good thing to do when you just need that quiet space. And
Right.
just write down what are all of the things that I want to be, that I need to do to shift to AI or automation. What are the things that I want to do an AFA model? What are the different categories I can think of? And if you use, it could be in a Word document. I don't care where it is. Just get it out of your head and just outline the high level of the things you want to change. If you are using a project management tool, Monday.com, Asana, Trello, Microsoft Planner, anything like that, I do this all the time. I have a board that I call Firm Focus Strategy. And Firm Focus Strategy is my only board where I do not put a date in the deadline. It is my parking lot of brilliant ideas that I cannot act on today. And then in my Firm Focus, I call it the admin board, but it really is like my operations board.
Hmm.
In that one, I have a task card that reminds me once a quarter to go to my strategy
Very,
board and
very
just
cool.
see if I'm ready to cherry pick something out of there and make it go live. This eases my brain where when I have all these really great ideas or I hear buzzes from people that you should be doing this or have you thought about doing that, I have a place where I can park it. My brain says, I love your trusted system. I can sleep at night knowing that the brilliant ideas that I come up with in my brain here have somewhere to go that are not going to just be forgotten in some random notepad somewhere on this messy desk with the pink elephants.
100%.
So I would say just start with that 30,000 foot view level. And the other great thing about this method is sometimes 3 months later, I look at something and I keep it there. And then 3 months after that, I look at it and I go, why the heck would I ever do that? I'm going to delete that one. Like that was a dumb idea. So instead of just like feeling like I'm juggling too much at once, there's a great book that Cal Newport, who wrote Deep Work, just authored another book called Slow Productivity. And that is essentially what he's talking about is we could be doing 15 different initiatives at once. And this is probably a large part of what you do, helping them with their marketing, is all of these really great ideas. Let's park 9 of them, or maybe 8, and let's focus over here, gain momentum or traction or automation. Sometimes that's just coming through. Now we've developed a good system with each other that we are producing our blogs or we're getting these articles out, and it's so systematized that it doesn't even feel like it's taking any time, even though at the beginning it felt like this big huge project. And then once those are in play and or done, we can pull in the third of our 10 great ideas. So
Yeah. Amazing. That's perfect advice. Yeah. What she said.
yes.
I love that. Now, I have one more question for you on this topic, and
Okay.
it's more like related to the article. So we wrote an article together, and
Mhm.
you made a comment in there that a modern partner looks more like a CEO than a trial lawyer, especially in
Mhm.
2020. And how do you see that trend being matured in 2026, I guess.
That shift of being more of the CEO than the trial
The
lawyer.
practicing attorney or
Yeah,
trial lawyer and
yeah. They can't do that.
profit manager.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe they can do both. And it's a very hard transition to make. And I think it really involves that person asking themselves if that's what they want to.
Mhm.
Because I do often see the litigator turned managing partner or CEO and wants to still hold on to what they loved to do before. They're both a full-time job and they involve two completely different ways of managing your team. The way you're managing your team for trial or other litigation deadlines or even contractual deadlines is going to look very different than the way you need to lead a team as a CEO or the leader or even the managing partner if that's still the I don't think that's what I put in the article, but and maybe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the term managing partner needs to go away because managing partner implies that you are managing people. And really, the big shift, and I think this is the underlying ask in your question, it's really about leading people. If we don't want the burnout, if we want the longevity in our team, we don't want turnover. Um, we want the increased revenue through the meeting those metrics that we've talked about today, Melissa. I think a lot of that goes into leading people and not managing people. And whereas being a trial lawyer, there is a little bit of managing people. I still think that there should be more
Absolutely.
of a leadership mentality to that because that is a big shift. We are no longer the firm where the old white guy partner is berating the associate and you just got to get all the work done and stay up all night. The new generation coming in is not tolerating this.
They will not be receptive to that communication style.
No, not at all. So that shift, fortunately, we have been seeing that shifting, but I think it needs to happen collectively across the board and in the firms, and it needs to be happening soon, like in the next, not even the next decade, the next couple of years, because I'm also seeing the younger generation, they're going to work for big firms or even sometimes small firms, and they're experiencing that and they're saying, peace out, I'm starting my own thing.
Yep.
And I'm going to be the firm of the future. I'm going to create the subscription model or the AFA model or the lifestyle firm where I am going to work 40 hours a week max on everything. And I'm going to be a competitive price for my clients because I'm doing it all in 40 hours, but I am bringing a high value to my clients. So they're not going to tolerate the old way of communicating, of expecting things, of berating, of managing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I definitely think the firms that are going to lean into that are going to be more successful down the line, regardless. And some firms are doing it now, which is great. They
Yeah,
probably have some leadership or modern partners that are in the younger generations, and it's smart that they started bringing them on board early, right? Like that's very important. And they
yeah,
obviously earned their chops to get there. They wouldn't be partners if they didn't. So I think that's
100%.
important.
Yeah.
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 Good. Well, good work always is rewarded. So keep doing that. That's the big takeaway
Yep. Yep.
today, as all the metrics start to change. But I'd like to thank you, Sarah, for being with us today. We will be coming back to you with segment two in just a bit.
Sounds good. Thanks, Melissa.